From toxic printing ink that made hundreds of extras sick to a prototype Mercedes borrowed from the future, Strange Days wasn't just ahead of its time, it was dangerously ahead. This cyberpunk thriller predicted social media voyeurism, police brutality footage, and virtual reality addiction decades before they became reality. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Strange Days. Custom 8-pound camera revolution. When Kathryn Bigelow set out to create the groundbreaking point-of-view sequences for Strange Days, she quickly discovered that no existing camera technology could capture what she envisioned. The film's entire concept hinged on these first-person squid sequences, where audiences would literally see through the eyes of characters experiencing recorded memories. Traditional cameras were simply too bulky, heavy, and limited to create the fluid, intimate perspective that the story demanded. Recognizing the critical importance of this technology, Bigelow turned to her then-husband James Cameron's production company, Lightstorm Entertainment, for a solution. Cameron's research and development division took on the seemingly impossible challenge, spending an entire year designing and fabricating a completely custom camera system from scratch. The result was nothing short of revolutionary for 1995 filmmaking standards. The final camera weighed only 8 pounds and was so compact that it literally fitted in the palm of a human hand. This 35mm camera featured interchangeable prime lenses, remote follow focus capabilities, and video assist technology, which was essential since the camera had no traditional viewfinder. The engineering team then mounted this miniature marvel on a modified Steadicam rig, creating a system that provided the stability and mobility of human vision while maintaining professional film quality. Director of photography Matthew Leonetti worked closely with Steadicam operator James Muro to perfect the system's usage. Muro could hold the camera anywhere while maintaining a clear viewfinder image through a helmet-mounted display unit developed specifically for this production. This innovative setup allowed him to literally position the camera where an actor's head would be, creating an unprecedented level of immersion for audiences. The camera's lightweight design and flexibility enabled shots that had never been attempted before in cinema, including the film's famous opening robbery sequence and the disturbing murder scenes that drove the plot forward. Without this year-long technological development, the core visual language of Strange Days simply could not have existed. Bono was almost the villain, long before Michael Wincott slithered onto screens as the sleazy music producer Philo Gant. U2's frontman Bono was actually cast in the role and actively pursued by the Strange Days production team for months. The character of Philo Gant serves as one of the film's primary antagonists, a manipulative record executive who controls Faith Justin's rising music career while keeping her trapped in an increasingly dangerous world of drugs and violence. The Hollywood Reporter made the official announcement in early 1994 that Bono had been cast alongside Ralph Fiennes and Angela Bassett in this pivotal, villainous role. This casting choice would have marked a dramatic departure for the Irish rock star, who was known primarily for his humanitarian work and powerful stage presence with one of the world's biggest bands. The role required an actor who could embody both charm and menace, someone who could believably manipulate Faith while maintaining the facade of a successful entertainment industry insider. However, the casting process proved more complicated than anyone anticipated. Trade publication Variety reported as late as March 1994 that Bono was still being actively sought for the role, suggesting that negotiations had become prolonged and difficult. Whether the delays were due to scheduling conflicts with U2's massive touring commitments, concerns about the character's darker elements, or simply standard Hollywood contract negotiations remains unclear from public records. Eventually, the producers moved on from Bono entirely and cast Canadian actor Michael Wincott in the role instead. Wincott brought his signature gravelly voice and naturally sinister screen presence to Philo Gant, creating one of the film's most memorable villains. His performance as the manipulative music executive who exploits Faith's talent while feeding her addiction perfectly captured the character's predatory nature. The idea of Bono playing such a thoroughly unlikable character remains one of cinema's most intriguing what-if scenarios, especially considering how different his interpretation might have been compared to Wincott's ultimately chilling portrayal. Prototype Mercedes time travel Ralph Fiennes' character Lenny Nero drives what appears to be a sleek, futuristic vehicle perfectly suited for the film's 1999 setting. But audiences had no idea they were actually looking at genuine automotive technology from the future. The elegant sedan that Lenny uses to navigate the dystopian streets of Los Angeles was a real 1997 Mercedes-Benz S500 prototype that the German automaker loaned directly to the Strange Days production team during filming in 1994. This arrangement meant that moviegoers were getting an authentic preview of luxury car design and engineering that wouldn't be available to the general public for another 3 years. The prototype represented Mercedes-Benz's vision of premium automotive technology for the late 1990s, featuring advanced styling and engineering innovations that were still in development at the time of filming. Mercedes-Benz's decision to loan this valuable prototype to a Hollywood production was quite unusual, especially considering the car's experimental status and the film's relatively modest budget compared to major studio blockbusters. The automaker likely saw an opportunity to showcase their upcoming technology in a high-profile science fiction film that would reach audiences interested in cutting-edge design and futuristic concepts. The car's presence in Strange Days served multiple purposes beyond simple transportation for the main character. Its sleek, modern appearance helped establish the film's near-future setting while providing a tangible connection between the movie's speculative technology and real-world automotive advancement. The vehicle's sophisticated design language perfectly complemented the film's overall aesthetic of technology that felt both futuristic and achievable. For automotive enthusiasts watching the film today, seeing this prototype in action provides a fascinating glimpse into Mercedes-Benz's design process during the mid-1990s. The car that eventually reached showrooms in 1997 bore strong resemblance to the prototype featured in Strange Days, making the film an unexpected time capsule of automotive development during that era. Mark Hamill's secret cameo. In one of the most surprising casting choices that went completely unnoticed by most audiences, Mark Hamill appears in Strange Days as a menacing riot police officer during the film's climactic New Year's Eve chaos. The actor who became famous worldwide for playing Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy takes on a completely different role as one of the heavily armored cops trying to control the massive street celebration that erupts into violence. Hamill's appearance comes during the film's intense final sequence, where thousands of people have gathered in downtown Los Angeles to celebrate the arrival of the new millennium. As the situation spirals out of control and police move in to restore order, Hamill's character confronts Angela Bassett's mace in a tense moment where he orders her to get on the ground. The scene occurs amid the confusion and violence of the crowd, with Hamill wearing full riot gear, including a helmet and face protection that largely obscures his recognizable features. This casting choice represented a dramatic departure from Hamill's heroic image as the galaxy's most famous Jedi Knight. Instead of wielding a lightsaber for justice, he appears as an authority figure representing the oppressive system that the film's protagonists are fighting against. The role required him to project menace and institutional power rather than the hope and determination that defined his most famous character. The cameo was so well disguised that even dedicated Star Wars fans watching Strange Days often missed Hamill's presence entirely. His voice, partially muffled by the riot gear, and his brief screen time made the appearance easy to overlook unless viewers were specifically looking for him. The casting choice seems particularly ironic, given that Strange Days deals heavily with themes of rebellion against corrupt authority, placing Luke Skywalker himself on the side of the oppressive forces that heroes typically fight against in science fiction stories. Toxic Nightclub, Nearly Killed. Cast. The atmospheric underground nightclub scenes that give Strange Days much of its gritty, cyberpunk flavor were filmed in a location that turned out to be genuinely dangerous for everyone involved in the production. The club, called the Retinal Fetish, where Faith performs her haunting musical numbers and much of the film's key action takes place, was actually shot in the basement printing room of the defunct Los Angeles Herald-Examiner newspaper building. While the location provided the perfect industrial atmosphere that director Kathryn Bigelow was seeking for the film's seedy underworld, it also presented serious health hazards that nobody anticipated during pre-production planning. The basement space was completely covered in residual printing ink from years of newspaper production, creating a toxic environment that had been sitting undisturbed since the publication ceased operations. During filming, hundreds of crew members and approximately 1,000 extras who worked in the cramped basement space began experiencing illness symptoms related to exposure to the chemical residue. The printing ink contained various toxic compounds that had accumulated over decades of newspaper production, and the confined space made the exposure particularly concentrated for everyone working on the elaborate nightclub scenes. The health problems became so widespread among the cast and crew that it created a serious production challenge for the filmmakers. Despite the obvious risks, the production continued filming in the location because the unique industrial atmosphere was crucial to achieving the specific visual aesthetic that Bigelow wanted for these pivotal scenes in the movie. The irony of the situation was not lost on those involved, as the film deals heavily with themes of corporate negligence and the dangers of technology, while the actual production was exposing its workers to real environmental hazards left behind by a defunct media company. The basement location perfectly captured the film's vision of urban decay and industrial abandonment, but at a genuine cost to the health and safety of the people bringing that vision to life. James Cameron's uncredited editing work. While James Cameron is officially credited as the writer and producer of Strange Days, his contribution to the film extended far beyond those roles in ways that most audiences never knew about. Cameron spent considerable time in the editing room working extensively on the film's post-production, particularly focusing on the complex final action sequences that required precise timing and rhythm to maintain their intense pace and emotional impact. His hands-on involvement in the editing process was crucial during the film's most challenging scenes, where multiple storylines converged during the chaotic New Year's Eve climax. These sequences demanded the kind of technical precision and action editing expertise that Cameron had perfected through his work on films like Terminator 2 and True Lies, making his input invaluable for achieving the specific pacing and structure that the film required. However, despite his significant creative contribution to shaping how the final film was assembled, Cameron could not receive official credit for his editing work due to Hollywood union regulations. The Editors Union had strict rules about who could be credited for editing work on major studio productions, and Cameron was not a member of the organization at the time of Strange Days production. This union restriction meant that Cameron's extensive editing contributions remained completely invisible to audiences and critics who evaluated the finished film. The official editing credit went to Howard Smith, who worked alongside Cameron, but was the only one who could legally receive recognition for the editing work under union guidelines. Cameron's uncredited editing work significantly influenced the film's final structure, particularly in how the various plot threads come together during the climactic sequences. His experience with complex action sequences and his understanding of how to maintain tension through precise cutting helped shape Strange Days into the intense thriller that audiences experienced, even though his contribution in this area was never officially acknowledged in the film's credits or during awards consideration. Real rave with celebrity DJs. The massive New Year's Eve party that serves as Strange Days' climactic setting wasn't created using typical movie magic with hired extras and fake crowd energy. Instead, the filmmakers organized an actual promoted rave event called Millennium that attracted genuine electronic music fans from across the Los Angeles area who had no idea they were becoming part of a major Hollywood production. The event was promoted by professional rave organizer Philip Blaine, who marketed it through local newspapers and radio stations as a legitimate concert experience. Music fans could purchase tickets for just $10 each, believing they were simply attending an exciting New Year's celebration featuring some of the biggest names in electronic music at the time. The lineup featured internationally renowned artists including Aphex Twin, one of the most influential electronic musicians of the 1990s, along with Lady Miss Kier from the popular group D-Light, and Doc Martin, a prominent DJ in the Los Angeles underground scene. These performers brought authentic energy and credibility to the event that would have been impossible to recreate with actors pretending to be musicians. Over 10,000 people showed up for what they thought was just a concert, creating the massive, genuinely enthusiastic crowd that appears in the film's final sequences. The attendees danced, celebrated, and reacted naturally to the music and performances, providing Kathryn Bigelow with authentic crowd footage that captured the real energy of 1990s rave culture. The production team cleverly integrated their filming needs with the actual event, using multiple cameras to capture the genuine excitement and movement of the crowd while the performers delivered live sets. This approach gave the film's climactic party scenes a level of authenticity and kinetic energy that would have been nearly impossible to achieve through traditional movie production methods, as the enthusiasm and reactions of the crowd were completely real rather than manufactured for the cameras. 5 hospitalizations from real drugs. The authenticity of the New Year's Eve party filming created unexpected and serious consequences that forced the production to shut down earlier than planned. What started as an ambitious $750,000 event designed to capture genuine rave energy turned into a medical emergency situation that highlighted the very real dangers of the party culture the film was depicting. During the massive celebration that took place at the corner of 5th and Flower Streets between the Westin Bonaventure Hotel and the Los Angeles Public Library, 5 attendees were hospitalized after suffering overdoses from ecstasy, the popular party drug that was commonly used at rave events during the 1990s. These were not actors or extras following a script, but real partygoers who had consumed actual illegal substances while attending what they believed was simply a concert event. The production had hired over 50 off-duty police officers to help manage the crowd of 10,000 people, but even with this extensive security presence, they could not prevent attendees from bringing and using drugs at the event. The medical emergencies created a crisis situation that required immediate intervention from paramedics and hospital staff, turning portions of the filming location into an active emergency response scene. The event had been scheduled to run from 9 p.m. on Saturday night until 4 a.m. Sunday morning, but the serious nature of the medical emergencies forced organizers to end the celebration shortly before its planned conclusion. The production team had to balance their need to complete filming with the immediate safety concerns created by the overdose situations. This incident illustrated the thin line between authentic filmmaking and real-world consequences, as the production's commitment to capturing genuine rave culture brought them face-to-face with the actual dangers that existed within that community. The hospitalizations served as a stark reminder that the hedonistic party atmosphere the film was documenting came with genuine risks that extended far beyond the fictional story being told. Juliette Lewis's unexpected vocal talent. Juliette Lewis's casting as Faith. Justin wasn't just about her acting ability or her edgy screen presence that had made her famous in films like Cape Fear and Natural Born Killers. The role of Faith required an actress who could convincingly portray a rising rock star, which meant the casting directors faced the common Hollywood dilemma of finding someone who could both act and sing authentically on camera. Director Kathryn Bigelow was determined to avoid the artificial feel that often comes with lip-syncing performances in movies, particularly because Faith's musical performances were crucial to establishing her character's artistic credibility and emotional depth. Bigelow wanted audiences to see genuine vocal talent that would make Faith's rise in the music world believable and compelling. The director's personal love for English musician P.J. Harvey's work led her to select 2 specific songs for Faith to perform in the film, the intense Rid of Me and the haunting Hardly Wait. These songs required a vocalist who could handle Harvey's challenging vocal style, which combines raw power with emotional vulnerability in ways that would be impossible to fake convincingly. Lewis proved to be the perfect choice because she possessed genuine singing ability that allowed her to deliver live vocal performances during filming. Her natural talent meant that when audiences watched Faith performing in the underground nightclub scenes, they were hearing Lewis's actual voice rather than a dubbed track or lip-synced performance. The authenticity of Lewis's vocal performances added significant credibility to her portrayal of Faith as a legitimate artist rather than just another actress pretending to be a musician. Her versions of the PJ Harvey songs were strong enough to be included on the film's official soundtrack album, where they stand alongside tracks by established musical artists like Aphex Twin and Tricky. This casting choice reflected Bigelow's commitment to authenticity throughout the production, ensuring that even the musical elements of the film felt genuine and believable. 60,000 rare promotional CD-ROMs. In an era when CD-ROM technology was still relatively new and exciting, the studio behind Strange Days created one of the most elaborate and exclusive promotional campaigns of the 1990s by producing 60,000 special CD-ROMs that contained unique behind-the-scenes content and music clips from the film. These weren't ordinary promotional materials that were handed out freely at movie theaters or sent to critics, but rather carefully crafted multimedia experiences that required a specific and limited distribution method. The CD-ROMs were made available exclusively through Rolling Stone magazine's special College Special issue, which was sold only at record stores rather than through traditional magazine subscriptions or newsstands. This unusual distribution strategy meant that fans had to actively seek out the promotional material by visiting music retailers, creating an element of treasure hunting that made the CD-ROMs feel more valuable and exclusive than typical movie marketing materials. The content on these promotional discs included production material that gave fans an inside look at how the film was made, along with music clips from the soundtrack that featured artists like Skunk Anansie, Tricky, and Juliette Lewis performing PJ Harvey covers. This multimedia approach was particularly fitting for a film that dealt with themes of technology and recorded experiences, as the CD-ROM format allowed the marketing to mirror some of the movie's own concepts about digital media and virtual experiences. The limited nature of this promotional campaign, combined with the specific distribution method through record stores, meant that relatively few people were able to obtain these CD-ROMs during the film's original release period. Over the years, as Strange Days developed its cult following and CD-ROM technology became obsolete, these promotional discs became highly sought-after collector's items among fans of the film and collectors of movie memorabilia, often selling for significant amounts when they occasionally appear at auctions or online marketplaces. Recycled Terminator 2 sound effects. Audiences with particularly sharp ears discovered an unusual connection between Strange Days and one of James Cameron's biggest blockbusters when they noticed that certain sound effects in the film were identical to those used in Terminator 2: Judgment Day. The most noticeable examples occurred during the intense chase scene where Mace and Lenny are being pursued by the corrupt police officers Steckler and Engelman through the streets of Los Angeles. The first recognizable sound effect was the screeching of car tires during high-speed turns, which sounded exactly like the tire sounds from the scene in Terminator 2 where the liquid metal T-1000 swerves his stolen liquid nitrogen truck onto an off-ramp while chasing John Connor. The second obvious reuse was the machine gun fire sound when Officer Engelman opens fire on Mace and Lenny's vehicle, which matched the audio from the scene where Sarah Connor shoots up Miles Dyson's home computer equipment with an automatic weapon. This audio recycling wasn't the result of laziness or budget constraints, but rather a practical consequence of how Hollywood sound departments operate within production companies. Both Strange Days and Terminator 2 were produced by James Cameron's Lightstorm Entertainment, which meant they shared the same sound department crew and had access to the same extensive library of recorded sound effects. When sound engineers need specific audio elements like tire screeches or gunfire, they typically draw from existing collections of high-quality recorded sounds, rather than creating new recordings for every single film. Since both movies were made by the same production company with the same audio professionals, it made perfect sense for them to reuse proven sound effects that had already been perfected for Cameron's earlier blockbuster. The shared sound library approach allowed the Strange Days sound team to maintain consistent audio quality while focusing their creative energy on developing new sounds for the film's unique squid technology sequences and other original audio elements that couldn't be borrowed from previous productions. Career-ending box office disaster. The commercial failure of Strange Days was so catastrophic that it nearly destroyed Kathryn Bigelow's directing career at what should have been the peak of her creative momentum. After the success of Point Break, which had earned $83 million worldwide and established her as a bankable action director, Bigelow seemed positioned to become one of Hollywood's major filmmakers. But Strange Days changed everything in the most devastating way possible. The film opened in limited release at the prestigious Ziegfeld Theater in Manhattan on October 7, 1995, where it managed to earn only $31,062 during its first weekend. When it expanded to wide release 1 week later across 1,691 theaters nationwide, the results were even more dismal, bringing in just $3.7 million that weekend and signaling immediate disaster for the studio. The final domestic box office numbers were truly shocking for a film with such high-profile talent and substantial production values. Strange Days earned only $8 million in the United States and Canada against its $42 million production budget, meaning it recouped less than 1/6 of what it cost to make. This represented one of the most severe box office failures of the 1990s, putting it in the same category as other notorious flops like Jade and The Scarlet Letter, which opened around the same time with similarly disastrous results. The financial disaster had immediate and long-lasting consequences for Bigelow's career prospects in Hollywood. Studio executives became extremely reluctant to trust her with major projects, viewing her as a director who couldn't deliver commercially viable films despite her obvious technical skills and artistic vision. This reputation forced Bigelow into a 5-year exile from feature filmmaking, during which she struggled to find financing for new projects while her career momentum completely disappeared. Her next film, The Weight of Water, wouldn't arrive until 2000, marking one of the longest gaps between major releases for any established director in Jericho 1's Missile Connection. The character name Jericho 1 for the murdered rapper who becomes central to Strange Days' plot wasn't chosen randomly by the screenwriters, but was actually a deliberate reference to a real Israeli missile system that added another layer of political meaning to the film's already complex themes about violence and warfare. This naming choice reflected the careful attention that James Cameron and Jay Cox paid to creating symbolic connections between their fictional story and real-world military conflicts. The Jericho missile system was an actual ballistic missile developed by Israel for long-range strikes, representing advanced military technology designed for maximum destructive impact. By naming their fictional rapper character after this weapon system, the writers created an intentional parallel between the character's role as a voice for social change and the explosive potential of military weaponry. In the context of Strange Days, Jericho 1 serves as a powerful activist figure whose music and message pose a threat to the corrupt establishment, particularly the racist police officers who ultimately murder him to silence his influence. The missile reference adds symbolic weight to his character, suggesting that his words and music function as weapons against injustice, capable of striking at the heart of systemic oppression with devastating accuracy. The naming choice also reinforces the film's broader themes about violence as both a tool of oppression and resistance. Just as the Jericho missile represents state-sponsored violence and military power, the character Jericho 1 represents the potential for artistic expression and social activism to serve as equally powerful weapons against corrupt authority structures. This military connection becomes particularly meaningful when considering that Jericho 1's murder by police officers sparks massive civil unrest throughout Los Angeles, demonstrating how the elimination of one influential voice can trigger explosive social consequences. The missile reference suggests that the character's death functions like a weapon itself, detonating widespread anger and resistance that the authorities cannot contain or control through their usual methods of oppression. 77 Nights of Continuous Darkness. Strange Days was filmed using one of the most unusual and grueling shooting schedules in Hollywood history, with 77 consecutive nights of filming in Los Angeles that created an authentically exhausted atmosphere among the cast and crew. Out of the entire 80-day production schedule, only 3 days were shot during daylight hours, meaning that virtually the entire movie was captured in the darkness that perfectly matched its dystopian vision of urban decay. This nocturnal filming approach wasn't just an artistic choice, but a practical necessity for creating the specific atmosphere that director Kathryn Bigelow wanted to achieve. The film's story takes place during the final 2 days of 1999 in a Los Angeles that has descended into chaos and violence, where most of the action occurs in the shadowy underworld of nightclubs, back alleys, and urban decay that only comes alive after sunset. The continuous night shooting created a physically demanding environment for everyone involved in the production, from the lead actors to the technical crew members who had to maintain their energy and focus while working against their natural circadian rhythms. This schedule meant that cast and crew were essentially living like vampires for months, sleeping during the day and working through the night in a cycle that mirrored the nocturnal lifestyle of the characters they were bringing to life. Producer Stephen Charles Jaffe noted that while the city of Los Angeles was generally cooperative with the production, the extensive night filming created unique logistical challenges, particularly for scenes that required cooperation from city services and public transportation systems. The relentless darkness of the shooting schedule contributed to the film's genuinely weary and apocalyptic visual style, as the fatigue and disorientation experienced by the cast and crew became part of the authentic atmosphere that audiences see on screen, creating a movie that feels genuinely exhausted and desperate. O.J. Simpson trial overlap. The filming of Strange Days occurred during one of the most racially charged and media-saturated events in American history, as production took place throughout the summer and fall of 1994, while the O.J. Simpson murder trial dominated national headlines. Director Kathryn Bigelow later observed that the real-world events unfolding around them perfectly echoed the film events, creating an eerie parallel between their fictional story and the actual racial tensions gripping Los Angeles. The Simpson trial had captivated the entire country with its explosive combination of celebrity, violence, racial politics, and questions about police conduct, particularly regarding the Los Angeles Police Department's handling of evidence and their history of racial bias. These themes aligned almost perfectly with Strange Days' central plot, which revolves around corrupt police officers murdering a prominent black activist and the subsequent cover-up that threatens to ignite citywide riots. Bigelow and her cast found themselves filming scenes about police brutality and racial injustice, while the real LAPD was facing intense scrutiny over their investigation methods and their treatment of African American suspects. The trial had revived painful memories of the 1992 Los Angeles riots that followed the Rodney King verdict, when the acquittal of 4 white police officers who had been videotaped beating a black motorist sparked 3 days of devastating civil unrest. The media circus surrounding the Simpson trial created an atmosphere of heightened racial awareness and social tension that permeated the film set and influenced the performances of the actors. The daily news coverage of courtroom proceedings, expert analysis of police procedures, and public debates about racial bias in the justice system provided a constant backdrop of real-world context that reinforced the fictional themes the filmmakers were exploring. This timing meant that Strange Days was being created during a moment when issues of police accountability, racial justice, and media manipulation were at the forefront of American consciousness, making the film's dystopian vision feel unnervingly contemporary and relevant.